And with that, the 2021 Buffalo Sabres season is finally over. Thank God. Hey everyone, my name is Melody. Thank you for clicking on this video. So today on Saturday, May 8th, the Buffalo Sabres season has finally ended with a 1-0 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Honestly, I couldn't think of anything more appropriate than getting shut out in the final game of the season. And oh my God, we did it. That's all we can really say. We did it. We made it to the end. It's finally over. So the 2021 Sabres season ends with the Sabres finishing in last place again. What I love is that, like, there have only been 4 years with the NHL having 31 teams, so you could possibly finish in 31st place. And the Sabres, out of those 4 years, have had 2 of those 31st place finishes. Now with Seattle coming in, there's going to be 32 teams, so the Sabres had the first ever 31st place, and will have the last 31st place in NHL history, so yay. And what comes with finishing in last place this year with the new draft lottery format is now the Sabres can't drop anywhere below 3rd overall, so they're guaranteed a top 3 pick in this draft. And of course, it just so happens to be like a meh draft. Last place is not unfamiliar territory for the Buffalo Sabres. This is the 4th time in the last 8 seasons that the Buffalo Sabres have finished in last place. Isn't it so fun when you just like say it and then you hear it and you realize how awful it's been this decade? Like the first 2 times they finished in last place, they were rebuilding. They were kind of doing it on purpose, especially that second 2015 year. And then in 2018 when they finished in last place, that was just like so unbelievably disappointing because with the talent they had on that roster, there was just no reason they should have finished in last place when you have like Jack Eichel, Ryan O'Reilly, Robin Leonard was our goalie who was going through a lot of stuff at the time, Evander Kane was on the team. But then you look at this year and then, you know, you look at this year and I'm not even mad. If I'm going to be totally real, I'm not even mad with the Sabres finishing last place again. Obviously, you know, I don't love it, but I mean, when you look at everything that has happened to the Sabres this season, I keep calling it the Murphy's Law season, but if you look at everything that's happened, like, what are we supposed to do? Just everything seemed to go wrong for the Sabres this year, and, you know, it was just such a rough year. Obviously, this isn't news, and this has kind of been a thing for a long time, but with the Sabres finishing in last place, they obviously missed the playoffs again for the 10th consecutive season, which is just remarkable. And that actually ties the NHL record for the longest playoff drought in NHL history. So yeah, it's been rough, guys. Like, it's been rough, but this one's over. And speaking of that too, with, you know, the Sabres missing out on the playoffs, this is actually the 9th consecutive season, and this is actually crazy to think about. This is the 9th consecutive season that the Sabres will pick in the top 8 of the NHL draft. Isn't that kind of like crazy to think about? Can you believe we've had 8 straight seasons picking in the top 8 of the draft and we're still where we are? It's insanity. Like, how could a team possibly pick that high for that long and still be bad? That's honestly fascinating to think about, if I'm being real. Especially when, like, one of those picks was Jack Eichel, one of those picks was Rasmus Dahlin. Like, ugh. But honestly, like, I think people who don't watch the Sabres and don't pay attention to the Sabres, and I don't blame you if you're one of those people, but I think they could look at our record and look at the 18-game losing streak and just, you know, and just think we're, like, that embarrassingly bad. And, you know, we were bad. Of course we were bad. But I just think there were so many factors that went into this just miserable season. Like, personally, while I don't think we were a playoff team, maybe in a regular year, I think we're way better than a last place team, and I just think we've had such an unfathomable amount of bad luck this year. Like, you know, how some people were ranking us 32nd in the league behind the Seattle Kraken, who aren't even a team yet. Like, you know, and I'm not saying that they were just, you know, a secretly good team that was just, you know, that just couldn't catch a break, but like I said, I just can't bring myself to be mad about this one. Like, last time we finished in last place, I was mad because I thought that we had the talent, and they just, you know, I don't know if they weren't trying hard enough or what the issue was, just everyone had things going on. this year, I mean, there was just so many things that went into it, right? Like, I mean, first of all, injuries played a huge factor. I don't think Jack Eichel played one game healthy this season. Like, there were obviously talk about, before the season he cracked his rib, and then, just he kept playing through injuries all season. He only scored 2 goals. Like, in what world is Jack Eichel only scoring 2 goals if he was healthy? And then he finished the season with that neck injury, which I'm worried is going to be a tough one to deal with. But, when your $10 million a year superstar center is, not playing healthy the entire season, that's not going to help. That's going to be bad, especially considering, how important to this team he is. So losing Jack was a tough one. And then, they lost Jake McCabe, who was having, in my opinion, a very, very, very good year. Losing him for the season as early as they did sucked. They lost Zemgus Girgensons at the beginning of the season. I don't know how much, he would have helped, but I'm sure he would have been a better option than Cody Eakin. And then you look at all the goalies they lost. Like, what, were we on, like, Michael Hauser was like our 6th string goalie or something? Who do we have? We have Linus Ullmark, Carter Hutton, Jonas Johansson, who was traded to Colorado, Dustin Tokarski, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, and then Michael Hauser was our 6th goalie. Like, Michael Hauser was a great story, but, like, the dude hadn't played actual hockey game in, like, what, a year? Like, how can you expect to be good when you're on your 6th goalie? Like, like, we had goaltending problems as it was. Like, Linus Ullmark was our only, like, legitimate NHL goaltender. And then to just keep losing goalies after goalies was just nuts. Like... It gets to where we're like, what else can you do? And then early in the season, I think it was like 10 games into the season, the Sabres dealt with, the COVID break, right? Like, it was New Jersey, the Devils, that had a COVID outbreak on their team. The NHL totally fumbled how they handled that situation, and a lot of the Sabres ended up getting COVID, and it really, while it seemed like they were kind of getting in a bit of a groove, maybe a little bit, I mean, that totally set them back. Eric Stahl said in particular, after he was traded to Montreal, he was saying that, he thought that really had an impact on the team to just have to be immediately shut down for 2 weeks, and some guys had some pretty serious COVID symptoms. Like, a lot of teams have dealt with that, and a lot of teams have had no problems bouncing back, but, I mean, the Sabres were one of those teams, and I think that really kind of played a huge role into it. Also, side note, there were a ton of times where I, like, legitimately forgot that Eric Stahl was a Sabre. And then, like, they had a horrible coach. Like, Ralph Kruger was just an awful, awful NHL coach, and I think, it really showed when Don Granato took over and, completely changed the way the Sabres played, while Ralph Kruger was definitely more of, like, a defensive-minded coach. Don Granato came in and just basically made the team more offensive-minded, and I think that really helped not only, the team's play, but I think the team's confidence. Like I love the one quote that he said. He said something along the lines of, like, there's a certain, like, psychology to the game, and if you're not scoring goals, that could really take a toll on you mentally. And there were actually a lot of things that Don Granato said throughout the year that seemed to completely contradict, Ralph Kruger's philosophy, which I absolutely adored. But I mean, the Sabres went through an 18-game losing streak and looked absolutely awful throughout most of those games. And I think once Granato took over and implemented his own system, I think, you clearly saw a difference. So I think a lot of that is reflective on the coach. So, for the Sabres to have terrible coaching, a terrible system that didn't really fit anyone for that long, I think that makes a difference. And then a ton of bad luck too, and especially I remember in the beginning of the season, like, they were hitting posts like crazy. Like, I remember it seemed like they had like 4 or 5 posts a game sometimes. Like, the posts were ridiculous. It just seemed like they would get so close to burying chances but just couldn't. Some puck luck here or there, and these games they change, right? Taylor Hall with the Sabres had like, what, a 2% shooting percentage, right? Like, come on. Side note, new channel rule, Taylor Hall's name is never to be spoken on this channel again. Okay. And then last, like, in terms of bad luck, like, we were just in such a tough division. Everyone in the beginning of the year saw the East Division as clearly one of the tougher divisions in the league. Ideally, you want to be a part of what makes that division tough, and obviously, a lot of people looked at the Sabres as, like, 2 easy points every night for a while, but with teams like Washington and Pittsburgh and, the Islanders and the Bruins and only 4 teams being able to get in, even the Rangers, made a push, and I think, they could have been one of those teams that could have made it in too. I mean, it was just like, that was another thing that played into it. So I think all of those things combined, like, yes, the Sabres weren't a good team. Yes, they had a very bad year, but I think just with all the factors that went into it, like, I just truly think that they were so much better than last place. Maybe not so much better, but, like, I don't In a normal year, I don't think they finish last place without, everything just seemingly going wrong. Like, for example, Linus Ullmark finishes with a record of 9-6-3. Like, he somehow has a pretty decent record on a last place team like this, So if, better goaltending, maybe this changes. If we could have had a healthy Linus Ullmark this whole season, like, how much of a difference does that make, And even too, like, I feel like even with this awful year, I feel like there is a lot to be hopeful about. I mean, to start, like, since Granato took over, I think Sam Reinhart had an excellent season. But there were a lot of concerns with Sam that he could really only produce because he was on the line with Jack, and with Jack going out so early in the season, and, you saw how Sam Reinhart really kind of took over once they finally put him at center, which is what a lot of people wanted to see. I thought Sam had an excellent year. He ended up being the Rick Martin winner for that new award that, like, what was it? Player that most embodies what it means to be a Buffalo Sabre. I was really happy with Sam. I was kind of one of those people, not super concerned, but somewhat concerned that, maybe he was just kind of a passenger on Jack Eichel's line. And I knew he was a good player, but to see him produce like this without Jack was really something, that I love to see. And if he could possibly, like, be a center full time in the future, that would be really helpful. Hopefully the Sabres don't trade Jack Eichel, and if you have Jack Eichel at center, you have Sam Reinhart at center, Casey Middlestat or Dylan Cousins, like, suddenly the center depth doesn't look as bad as it has looked in the past. And speaking of Dylan Cousins too, I mean, I thought he had an excellent rookie season. He did finish with 4 goals and 9 assists for 13 points through 40 games, so that's not really something that jumps off the page. But I think more than anything, he really showed hustle. He really showed heart. Obviously everyone will remember that fight he had against the Rangers where the Sabres were down and he dropped the gloves. It's just been so long that the Sabres have had players that have just shown no heart, no passion. And to see a guy like Dylan Cousins, I think he really stood out as someone who clearly wants to be great, who wants to prove that, he wants to win. It was awesome to see, and while maybe the points weren't as high as they could have been, I was more than happy to watch Dylan Cousins this season. And then I thought, too, under Granato, Casey Middlestat coming out of nowhere. I thought he was excellent the last, month or so of the season, and him on a line with Rasmus Asplund and Tage Thompson. I mean, if that could be, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Seattle, but if that could be, your third line going forward, I think you're in pretty good shape, honestly. Tage, I had some pretty harsh words for Tage Thompson earlier in the season. I think they were justified, but I think he really has kind of found his game a little bit more, and I think, him along with Casey and along with Rasmus Asplund, I thought they really finished the season strong. Anders Bjork, too, like, I know I made jokes about how the Sabres won the trade with Boston, but Anders Bjork, while there were games that he looked awesome, there were games that I didn't even notice him, he made for a fun story after the trade deadline. And then, of course, my favorite part, Rasmus Dahlin. Like, it was so horrible watching him under Ralph Kruger, and I truthfully don't know why he was so bad under Ralph Kruger, with Ralph having such a defensive-minded system, and Don Granato coming in and allowing Dahlin to just be free and do what he does best. To see Dahlin completely turn his season around and look like, the first overall pick that we drafted a few years ago, and look like the superstar that he hopefully will turn out to be. It made me feel a lot better, I gotta be honest, because I was real nervous about it. So, I mean, going into next year, obviously, this is going to be a crazy offseason, but get healthy, stay healthy, get some luck, and, maybe we can turn this around. They have a lot of decisions to make, starting with Don Granato. Like, are they going to bring him back as, their permanent head coach, or are they going to actually do a search? Who knows? I think Granato's deserved a look for sure. They got some decisions to make with some contracts, and so it'll be an interesting offseason for sure. So obviously, like, this was such a weird year with, playing only the same 7 teams a million times this year, like in a weird one and done kind of season. Like, if we weren't going to win the Stanley Cup, which we obviously never were, finishing last place, getting a top 3 pick, whatever happens, I mean, it could be worse. Like, this is just such a dumb year, and I'm so glad it's over. I don't really know about this draft. Like, we'll see. There's part of me that doesn't even want the Sabres to win the draft lottery, and I'm sure I'll talk about this more, like, in the future when we get closer to the draft lottery and the draft and everything. But, with Owen Power kind of looking like maybe the possible number 1 overall pick, I'm not completely sold on him, you know, so I like the forwards a lot better. I love Mapineers. So, but I'll talk about that more when we get closer to the draft, but it will be a very interesting offseason. I will be here for all of that. And one final note, I just want to thank all of you for following along with me this season. It has been such an awesome season. I know, you know, the Sabres have, you know, really kind of been a bummer this season. But I appreciate all the support. I appreciate you guys following along with me. Hopefully next year we're celebrating the end of the playoff drought. Hopefully things can turn around and you can see happy Mel instead of sad Mel. But either way, off season's coming up. You know, the playoffs are coming up for everyone else. So I guess I'm back to being a bandwagon Avalanche fan. Seriously, you guys have been awesome, and so I just wanted, from the bottom of my heart, I wanted to thank you for making this such a cool year here on YouTube. And yeah, so thank you for watching this video. Comment below, tell me your thoughts on the season. Give me some more reasons to be positive, because we need some positivity going. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you soon. Go Bills. Go Sabres. Onward and upward, guys. See you later.